Welcome back, Knowledge Unbound. Little sad we're nearing the end of the season. Never the end, really. I mean, we have next season to look forward to, and we've had such a great time with all these great guests. This is episode 9. Today we have a really interesting conversation. I had the pleasure of talking to two people at the same time. Constanza Bartholomae, faculty developer at Bryant University, and Christian Fauria, who is now a professor in residence at Bryant University. And there's a lot. Christian's an intense dude, and he's just a lot of fun to talk to. And what him and Constanza have been working on. We'll get more into it during the conversation, but what people might know him from is from the National Football League. He spent 10 years, I think, 10 or 12 years as a National Football League player, got into sports broadcasting, and is now teaching that at Bryant University. There's a lot of through lines there about his experience with coaches, right, and what he's learned from that, and what he brings to his classroom. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation. It was a good one. See you at the end. We are trucking along, like Sigel likes to keep saying. I'm really excited. I'm on the campus of Bryant University in Smithfield, Rhode Island. There's a little bit. It feels like my old stomping ground. I lived in Providence for 7 years, so I do miss this state a lot. I'm with two wonderful people. Old friend of mine, Constanza Bartholomae, helps run. Do you run? To me, you're always in charge, so I'm going to say you run it. You can correct me after. And one of the faculty members here, a special individual, his name is Christian Fauria. You all know my jam. I don't, kind of like to speak on behalf of my guests. So, Constanza, let me start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what brought you to Bryant?
Sure. So thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm so grateful to be here with two of my friends. So this just makes me feel like I'm at home in the office today. But Constanza Bartholomae, interim director of the Center for Teaching Excellence at Bryant University. What brought me to Bryant was the idea of being able to work with the faculty. So I entered Bryant in 2020. Not a whole lot happened during that time frame.
None that I could think of.
Yeah, no, nothing big in the world was going on. And my boss at the time was Edward Karras, and he said, you've got degrees in the humanities, you've got degrees in business. I think you'd be a really nice fit for working with our faculty one-on-one in consultations. And that was always my dream, because once I entered college, I never left. So I found myself teaching right after I graduated with my first master's degree. And then I found that a lot of universities had teaching centers.
Yeah.
And those centers became my home. And so folks in them started saying, well, why don't you consider doing this?
Right.
And I said, well, how do you become a faculty developer? What's that process? And then only to learn that there is no one straight path in order to get there. So that led me to, working in the teaching centers at a couple of institutions before coming here to Bryant full time. And it was a dream to land that as full-time employment and to get to do what I do every day.
It's a great thing you brought up that you taught before you did this, right? And because there's a sense in which when I think about faculty development, educational development, we know there's different terms for it. It's somewhat analogous to teaching a classroom, right? I mean, the same things we ask of faculty to be with their students, to listen, to empathize, to understand their history. We ask that of educational developers to understand who the faculty are. And so in that vein, there's a special faculty member that you spend a lot of time with and be doing some cool stuff. Christian Fauria, why don't you tell us who you are?
Well, I'm a professor in residence. There you go. It's funny. Whenever people introduce me, they don't introduce me as who I am. They introduce me of what I used to do.
I don't.
It's the only, like, professional sports is the only profession that, regardless of what you do afterwards, they always lead with former pro football player, 13-year NFL vet, 2-time Super Bowl champion, like Christian Fauria. That's normally how I get introduced. And even if you're on like Survivor, right, and you work in insurance, they will say that person is a former football player. They don't say he sells insurance because nobody cares. Right. This doesn't come with any weight. No, but I'm a professor in residence, man. I'm a teacher. And I've been here for a little over a year.
Okay.
Full time for not even maybe 6 months. And yeah, I played in the NFL, played in college. I won a national championship. I've won pretty much at every level I've ever been in football. And now I am, I'm teaching here at Bryant University. I'm teaching not football. That's the thing. I'm not teaching football. I'm teaching something that I know I know more of, which is broadcasting, radio, television, and leadership. Those are the 3 areas that I specialize in.
So what made that transition happen? Right. So both the transition from professional sports to doing broadcasting and things like that, but then to teaching it.
Well, listen, I always wanted to be in radio and TV. So everything I did during my football career was just kind of getting me ready, saying yes to almost everything, being on the radio, doing interviews, showing up to appearances. And then when I was done, I just hustled and, got a job. And I'm not going to bore you with everywhere I've been, and the challenges that existed there. But I've been at ESPN, I've been at CBS, I've been at CBS HQ, I've been at a place called Versus. I did an audition at Fox. I've been everywhere, but I've been in radio and TV locally here in New England for the past 15 years.
Okay.
I do the Patriots pre and post game show. I do their late night sports final show. I work for Sirius XM on Wednesdays doing nothing but football. So I was prepared to teach what I do. Because I've been embedded in it for so long.
But let me ask you this. You say you don't want to bore us, but at the same time, given the fact that you teach a class on this, I imagine you probably share with your students, hey guys, I didn't just roll out the field and walk into a broadcast booth and was immediately successful, right? I had to get rejected. I had to kind of mess up, right? So are you sort of that open with your students?
I let them see every single scar I have. It is very important because I think most people think that, hey, you played in the NFL, they're going to hire you.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Ask Emmitt Smith. Ask Jerry Rice. They all got hired. Right? Jerome Bettis. They weren't any good for one reason or another. Whether they just thought they could just roll out of bed and just start talking nonsense that didn't make any sense, then that would be fine. But they had to work at it. You have to network. The number one thing I talk about, forget about the technical skill, where the mic is and how your voice and your tone. The biggest part about this job is hustling.
Yeah.
You got to be a hustler. You have to work. And it's not just, there's a skill to it. There's an art to it. There's a time frame to it. We teach all this stuff. That's really the number one thing. Because I can teach anyone technical aspects. I can teach them physical aspects. The emotional side is what I would say goes into a lot of what I teach. Rejection, self-worth, all those things that young adults, bitch and complain about, that adults deal with too.
Yeah.
So to be honest with you, I lean on Constanza for a lot of technical aspects about how do I teach and how I grade. But I also probably lean more on her for, can I say this?
Yeah.
And this is how I want to say it.
Well,
can I do it?
Let me ask you a question on that. And Constanza, I'll bring in here in a second. And this is maybe me just as a relatively naive consumer of sports, right? I grew up in a different country, so I didn't really watch NFL until I moved to America at 19, right? So I grew up watching soccer through and through, and cricket too, but soccer was number one, right? And one of the things that strike me now when I watch sports is the pre and post game people, right? And it's helpful. I'm just going to use a soccer reference. It's helpful that when one of the people on that panel was a former soccer player, they can interpret some of the things that happened in that game for me as a viewer who never played professional sports. Big fan of the game. I think I know a decent amount, but I never coached, I never played. So they can interpret plays. They can tell you what somebody was thinking, right? So there's a sense in which I'm relying on their sophisticated knowledge to make that knowledge palatable for me. So I now have a better sense of what's going on, right? There's a sense in which, Constanza, my intro bio students are relying on me to take the complicated aspects of the concepts of physiology and anatomy so they can get a way in to this discipline. Is that a link that you all try to make when you do this, right? Both when you design your curriculum, when you teach, but also when you support him?
I mean, I think I wouldn't have said it as eloquently as you just said it, but yes, I think that's exactly what it boils down to. You know, as Christian was listening to you speak, I could see his eyebrows being raised. Yes, that's exactly it. Because, you know, to me, tell me if I'm wrong, Christian, but I think you agree with that yes, our job is to be here to support and motivate our students. It's also to give them the energy and the enthusiasm to break these complex ideas down themselves, work with us, have us validate, okay, yes, you're on the right track here, or, you know, let's think about this question a little bit further. And to learn alongside them, because I'll tell you, I learn from my students every single day. I learn from my faculty every single day. So yes, I do think so. But I think it's not just that we're breaking down the material. They're helping us, you know, they're, you know, you're saying, okay, but have you looked at it this way too? That's learning.
They as in the students, or they as in the faculty that you work with? Okay.
Both, yeah. Because I think what you just pointed out, you know, with your sports reference is when Christian walked into my office, I too knew nothing about football. I also
you have less. No, you moved here from Germany, so.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. And my dad was a soccer guy through and through. He was a soccer goalie growing up. That is what got him through World War II. Honestly, was soccer and the just notion that he could go outside and play and distract himself in the midst of a really, really awful time. But to your point, you know, when faculty come in, I'm not always familiar with their subjects. I don't know anything about broadcasting. I don't know anything about football. And yet Christian was here saying, hey, I need support with teaching. That's a language I can talk about.
Right.
That's where we found common ground. And that's, as you know, that's what we do in educational development, because I can't be a subject matter expert in everything.
Yeah.
But I can be a subject matter expert in pedagogy and what evidence-based teaching strategies are out there, and looking at all of these different subjects and thinking about how we can reach all of these different individual students.
Yeah.
So just to add to that, because we're talking about making the complex simple. If you're talking about what I do, our producers and my program director would always say, remember, everybody is not a former NFL football player. So I can't explain a certain play like I'm talking to my coach, because we are speaking a different language, and it's an elite language based on, you know, the job that we're doing, you know. But most of the time, like the things that I always try to and say, how can I continually dumb this down? Because the one thing that would always screw us up in the NFL was we were making a real simple play overly difficult, because we were laboring over its design and the personnel and the execution and its foundation. We are blocking and tackling, and it becomes harder once you get 5 people trying to make it better when it's already complete. Like the harder part is convincing the person who needs to do that how to do it well. That's your real goal as a coach. You put the plays up, okay, you 5 yards and turn around. That's the play. Okay, well, there's nuance to that. There's an emotional attachment to that. There's so many different things that go into that. My son got diagnosed with diabetes maybe 6 years ago, and I had to sprint to the hospital, just like drive like a crazy man, because he had all these complications. And as soon as I walked into the door, the lady like handed me a syringe and said, we got to teach you how to do this now. You're gonna have to give your son injections, you know, insulin injections. And then they created this formula and all of this. I was like, this doesn't work for me. I'm going to kill him. Like, I swear to God, I said that. I was like, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I said, so what you're saying is this, blah, blah. And he said, yeah. I said, well, why is it fair to say, can I just think of it this way? And she said, yeah, your formula gets the same answer that our formula gets. And I said, okay, well then I'm going to use this, you know, and I will come in here all the time with some stupid idea. Okay. Makes no sense.
You mean come into?
I would come in to see Constanza to the CTE, right? And I was like, and I barge in like a big elephant, right? I don't even knock. She's on the phone. I'm like, I got 5 minutes. I need your expertise. This is the problem. It's think about it as an equation. I can't see it. And you know her, right? She's very calm. I'm out of control. And there is such a calm ease and confidence that I leave this building with, this room with, when I take her advice as a coach, because that's who she is to me. She's my coach.
Yeah.
And when then I, give it to my students, and then I present it to my students, there's no hiccup in my step. There's no cracking in my voice. Right. I say it with confidence. Right. And because I hate when they look at me and I'm like, oh crap, I'm not making sense. And that's usually.
Well, here's what you don't know, Christian. And what makes this delightful and what makes partly why I was so excited to have this conversation. Constanza knows this. I think, a lot has gotten better in terms of faculty development, in terms of how we're perceived and, how people regard her services. But it wasn't always that way. And in fact, there's still, I'm sure, I don't want to deputize faculty, right? But I'm sure there's still people, maybe even on this campus, who don't quite think that training somebody to teach or working with faculty is a thing. It's a thing that requires a full-time person and a full-time office, right? So we in higher education, we still have, unfortunately, a culture. Again, it's getting better, but we still have a little bit of a culture as all you need to do is get your PhD in something, and that gives you the right to teach. So here it is, you have, Christian Fauria come in, a very accomplished individual, but willing to barge through like an elephant, right? And say, hey, I need help with this.
Where are the peanuts?
I don't know. I have a feeling you do ask that question. There's this thing, I don't know how to do this well.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not going to transfer the expertise I have in this other space and just assume I can walk in here and teach. And that humility is what builds the trust and builds the relationships. I don't know if you kind of are aware of that coming in, but, it's hot and cold, Constanza, in terms of, sometimes you get people who love this stuff, and sometimes people like, yeah, whatever. I know all the physics in the world. I don't need your,
Yeah, well, Brian, as you just said, I know this. This is my day-to-day, right? I think part of what's great about being an educational developer is to say, okay, are you unsure? Follow me. Let's defy expectations together, right? I think it's really cool when that light bulb switches for certain faculty who might be hesitant. I think it's also too, we're so proud of our subject matter expertise in academia. And we're told, when you have your PhD, you're one person who knows so much knowledge about this particular subject. And we don't spend, as you know, so much time saying, here's how to carry this information over Jim Lang style. Here's how to write like, you teach. Here's how to teach like you write. Like we don't do that. And so folks think, okay, well, I went through the grueling process of school. I've got my title now. Some folks, right? Again, not everyone.
Not everyone.
And they don't come. I also think a lot of times it's fear. It's, I don't know what questions to ask.
But let me interrupt you real quick
please do.
To ask a follow-up. Is it fair? Yes, but also, if I have a PhD, and I know that not everybody does, but if I have sort of a degree that gives me the right to do this job, is there a feeling almost of embarrassment, like I'm not supposed to be in a situation where I'm asking for help with something, right? So that perception of students seeing you as expert, that sort of transfers to every other space on campus, where to come to Constanza and say, hey, I need help with this thing, is like, that's not a thing I should have to do because of what I've achieved. Right. Yeah. Which is a slightly different thing to fear. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think that's why there are so many folks who reach out to me after course evaluations come out and say, let's process them, right? Because we don't talk to faculty about, just like students don't always know what office hours are for. We don't always talk to faculty and say, hey, here are the types of questions that you can ask. But I think also there's fear in trying something different for anyone, whether you're on the field, you're in broadcasting, and the public scrutiny of what if it doesn't work out. That can be really, really difficult for some faculty or for some football players to stomach, right? What if this doesn't work out?
Yeah.
That's tough.
But Chris, let me jump in real quick because I got to say this. Now, I gotta be careful, but I'm not.
I got you.
Because, like I'm very opinionated and maybe I'm stepping out of my lane, but there is an aspect of teaching that I have noticed in my short period of time. And for the lack of a better word, I think it's arrogance. I think there's a tad bit of arrogance with, I know it all. I got my PhD. I've done it for years. Why should I change? Why should I alter what I do? Why should I ask for help? I'm the expert. Like, I mean, and maybe I'm just, equipped because your whole career, you always have to try to evolve. Because in sports, the older you get, the more work you put in because you're older. So we're always looking for an edge, an advantage. We're trying to figure out how we can make and do our job better.
Right.
And that's why I've always leaned on assistant coaches, strength coaches, nutritionists. How can I do this better? How could I do my job better? And
so your whole career, you're basically asking those questions all the time.
I'm always asking. First of all, I'm always curious by nature, but I do want to be the best at my job.
Right.
Like I want to be the best at it. And and there isn't anyone I won't ask. Like you, Constanza has just been so good at, just expressing, the things that I need to know. And I'm not ashamed to say I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't get it. And I'd be foolish to walk around like I do get it. That would make it worse. So with me, with the way the profession works, I do see, the subject is math is never really going to change. Who's adding every now and then there's a new beautiful mind that adds an equation at some point in time. But I think the way you teach it could change.
Right.
Is I guess is what I'm saying.
So thanks for that, because the question I was going to ask you, I'm thinking about the timeline that you laid out for us of your career.
Yeah.
Right. So, University of Colorado.
Yeah.
Seattle Seahawks.
Yep.
New England Patriots.
Yep.
Broadcasting.
Well, then I went to Washington and then Carolina the last 2 years, and then straight to broadcasting.
So the and again, I didn't follow NFL growing up, but the little I know of it now, or these many things I've read, is when you go, even though you won a national championship in Colorado, what I've been told is when you go from the college games to the NFL, even though you win, et cetera, it's a different learning
night and day.
It's a different learning curve,
night
right?
And day.
And so there's that, right? And then there's I'm sure when you move from Seattle to New England, you probably had to get used to a new system. Even though you said you were sort of preparing yourself for broadcasting, when you actually started to do it, right? That would have been right. So the point I'm getting at is you would have had several times in your life where you had to have that humility, because you couldn't come into Seattle and be like, I won a national championship. Nobody can tell me, right? Night and day, right? When you go to New England, you probably win the Bill Belichick era,
yep.
Right? And I mean, that's his own, that's his own kind of ecosystem, right? So I'm just curious about how much of years of having to have that practice humility, right?
That's the word. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you got to be comfortable with that.
Right.
Like humility, I think, is a learned trait as well.
Mm-hmm.
I always tried to have humility in anything I did.
Mm-hmm.
Even in my personal life, I want humility with my kids, with my wife, with my parents, with my friends. It's such an underrated asset, to have, is just to be humble, right? I never rolled it right. The one time I did beat my chest, I regretted it because I just felt like it was just so needless. Mm-hmm. And it was so much more comfortable than, and being humble. So, yeah. So the humility thing is something that I think you learn over time, and then you recognize over time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we talked about off mic, actually, sorry, that I really want us to talk about in more detail is this interesting, well, actually, to me, very obvious parallel between coaching and teaching. And I really want us to get into it. Selfishly, I've made that point, Christian, before I met you, right? I've always been a little maybe disappointed at how people talk about teaching, mostly as if it only happens when there's 4 walls and 20 students in front of you. It's like, no, dude. You run into a student, you having a conversation as they go to cafeteria, you having an education moment. Like, it's not mentoring in a lab, education moment, right? And so it seems like in a roundabout way, you've come to that same conclusion through your relationship with coaches over the years in different contexts, good coaches, medium coaches. Even the medium ones, I'm sure you learn things from them as well. You might learn what not to do or different ways you might do things. So I'm curious, and either of you all can kind of start with this. What from that experience have you brought to your teaching practice? And what are these sort of parallels you're trying to make, not just for yourself, but maybe for other people who are interested in having that discussion?
Oh, geez. What you start? I don't even know where it's
feels like a dissertation.
It's a big question.
Yeah, it's a big question. I'm like, I feel like we have to tag team it.
Yeah, got this. I think let's go. I think first we have to, in each moment, as you just said so beautifully, make people feel seen. And we have to really understand who they are in order to make them feel seen. What do I mean by that? If a student, runs up to me across campus, I want to acknowledge that I know who they are. Because I think if folks don't feel comfortable having that, question moment with you where they're asking something of you, if they don't feel comfortable being vulnerable in that state of curiosity, then we're doing something wrong. So I think first is I think about how I have been made to feel like I don't belong in a classroom setting, like I don't belong in a conversation. And there is a lot of exclusion in academia, just like there is a lot of inclusion, right? So I think about how I don't want to feel first when I'm thinking about how I'm going to interact with other people. And then I think, okay, what would make me feel like I mattered in this conversation? Right. That's how I approach it. But also, what would make me feel comfortable to talk to this person? Because in educational development, we have to be able to ask faculty big questions, and they have to feel comfortable enough to answer them. Otherwise, the dynamic doesn't work. It's relationship building.
So yeah, building that trust is a necessary precursor to really doing anything.
That's the groundwork,
together, right?
Yeah, because we know that faculty won't come if we don't provide that context, right? We're non-evaluative confidential spaces, but we have to truly be non-evaluative. If you come in and ask me a question, I say, Brian, you should know the answer to this. You're probably not going to want to come ask me the question again, right? So that's the building block. I think first.
Let me push you on that.
Yeah,
I'm Christian. I'll bring it in a second, but because I agree with you, but I'm thinking of the listener who wants specifics, right? And not that you haven't given specifics, but the thing that comes with, right? Once I open the door to, getting to know you on that level, then that comes with things, right? So you might start confiding in me things that I can't really do anything about, or I have to have some kind of psychological preparation to have much more difficult conversations because we've built that trust. I'm not saying any of this is bad, right? But I'm just saying it can't just simply be a matter of like, I want you to trust me so we can, do good curriculum design together. It's that relationship then opens the door, just to give go back to the coach analogy, right? Somebody can just walk into the locker room and say, X's and O's, and this is the play we're going to run, right? But if you know that your tight end is comes from a situation where to get to the NFL is a life-changing economic thing for their family, like you understand that that's a different experience for that student, right? And you as a coach may not be able to go and solve their family situation, but by sort of understanding the stakes involved, right? You react to them differently. Your embrace of them is different. And I wonder, without making any assumptions in anyone, the preparation for that. What has it been like for you?
Yeah, well, I think each individual student, each individual faculty member is different. So first, you need to take the time to get to know a little bit about them, and not just how are you, because it's so easy to just respond good to that. But what makes you excited to teach this class?
Your why?
Yeah. What is your philosophy in terms of teaching? How do you, see this content? You have to really ask better questions. I mean, we know this with AI. You have to, because the content, right?
But it's a little sad AI forced. I mean, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. But and now it's okay. Why does this matter to you?
Yeah.
What about this lesson is important to you? What's the takeaway for the student here? You have to ask those big, big questions so that faculty can feel comfortable to do it. But I hear you. You also have to know when to refer out, right? So if a faculty member comes to you with something and you're not prepared or trained or, in that, you have to know when you need to lean on the rest of your university team to help support that faculty member. The same thing with students, right? That's why we have tons of student-facing resources on campus. So I'm not sure if I answered your question there.
You did. I mean, it's no one person could be everyone's Jesus, right?
Let me ask you a question.
Monday, so
it's Easter Monday. Let me ask you a question. what makes you trust an individual personally? Like what builds trust for you? What do you have to go through in order to trust? You never met me before. What kind of relationship would we need to have over time for you to trust me?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it depends, right? I mean,
well, let's workshop it real quick.
I'm about to. So, the follow up would be it would be trust built around a circumstance, right? So, if I were to use you as the example that you brought up, the first line of trust is that you introduced to me via Constanza. So there is some kind of positive collateral that comes from the fact that I know her and trust her, in this professional context. And so when she recommends Christian Fauria, I was like, oh yeah, that's a recommendation from Constanza goes along.
Check that box.
Right, you check that box.
Okay, that's
right?
one. I'm almost there.
No.
Not quite.
So we're sitting there. So we're sitting here having this wonderful conversation. Yeah. I'm not saying, I'll have you fly a plane and I'll be in it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not. Right.
We just did a big time trust fall.
I'm not saying I'm gonna hand you my credit card and hope you bring it back not maxed out, right? So I think it's a little situational, and you what you have to do, you have to sort of figure out what is the appropriate situation that this trust is being built around, and maybe over time that situation gets extended, right? But you first think about the context first, and then you build from that. I'm curious to hear why you ask.
Because I don't think it's any different. And it's basically like shared experiences is what I think you over time, like circumstances, obstacles, challenges, shared, accomplishments, job well done type of stuff. And I think the first thing I would say, if you're looking at like a whole like check box as far as a class, like what I've kind of found with Constanza is, first of all, the number one thing I'm going to do, I got to learn their name. That's the number one thing, because that's the easiest thing. And then I would say, in no particular order, the next thing I want to do is put them in as many uncomfortable situations as possible and help them through it. I think there's, and that in my classes, I create those on purpose. I know a person, once I get to the midway point or the 5th week or something like that, I know who's timid, who's shy. I know who's maybe a little bit lazy. I'm constantly evaluating their body language, their tone, how they speak, when they send in their stuff, what they do. I'm constantly trying to make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. Vulnerable. And then I help them get through it.
Right.
I'm not leaving you no matter what. No matter what, I'm not leaving. You can trust me on that. Right. My goal is to make sure you get an A. If you don't get an A, I screwed up. Now, so, and that's what I think, like those little building blocks are no different than what my coaches did to me on the football field. And that's why when I met Constanza, I'm like, this is some Jedi mind trip type of stuff. She's doing the same damn thing.
What he's saying is you can go and coach the New England Patriots.
You could.
Right now.
He compared me to Bill Belichick
I did.
once. And my husband was like, Constanza, that is the highest honor. And he was speechless.
I'm sorry. I'm a Miami boy. I'm gonna go with Mike Shula.
Mike Shula, yeah. But I mean, listen, not to get like I think you also need to kind of like I value that. I've benefited from it, right? So I'm passionate about giving it back. Because there's no way I'm who I am unless I had the right coaches in my life, right? And there was always this trust element, that we needed to jump over. We say this all the time, nobody gives a crap what you know until they know that you care. Like that element, I think, can be incorporated into teaching, So, I mean, that's my kind of view of the trust element. And I can tell you right now, like I'm getting there with it. The only thing that I don't like about it is like, you get these students and then, they're gone. So I don't get to add value to their life. Forget about the subject I'm teaching.
You do add value to their life.
I want more.
You don't get to be around when that value gets manifested in their adulthood.
Yeah.
So here's the thing though, Christian. I
come on.
I'm with you. But I also don't think it's rocket science in the sense that, and Constanza and I have talked about this in the past, right? When we talk about learning in a classroom, and I'm gonna pick on STEM here because this tends to be more of a problem in our area, is we tend to have this like big expert talk, 3-4 weeks later, you get this big exam, rinse, repeat, 3-4 more weeks, right? And And my question to people is, think of anything you've learned in life. Just a regular thing. Think of, Christian, you said you had kids. I have kids as well, right? When I'm teaching my son to make pancakes or teaching him to fix his bike or something, right? I don't just have him read the manual and then go fix it on his own. Like, just intuitive, you sit with the person, right? And you again, you make him uncomfortable. You have him do little things. You give him feedback along the way. Like, it's a normal way of getting good at something, which I imagine is what you've experienced when you were being coached well through those years, right? You were, somebody was giving you feedback all the time, and they weren't just looking at your speed and your strength. They were looking at your body language. They were looking at, your intensity, your eyes, how you reacted to mistakes. So this is not to diminish in any way what you're saying. Is to say, I'm glad that you're making this explicit, because I think Constanza and I have been saying for years that, we're not trying to come up with a whole new way of learning. This is just how people learn. We just, for whatever reason, feel like because we got this PhD, our job is to just talk, and then test you on how much you've heard. So
what part don't you agree with?
Oh, no.
I feel like you were like, I don't agree.
No. I agree with everything. What I was saying is, you're coming to this realization, like you're making this comparison that I think is an accurate one. What I'm trying to add to this, just to use improv language here, I'm gonna yes and you. What I'm gonna add to it is that I think that comparison was always there. And I think it's gonna be really helpful for someone like yourself who's come from another world to come and share that message. Because I think sometimes when people like Constanza and I say it, like we sound a little preachy and a little like, that's your job kind of thing, right? But somebody who's kind of lived through both things, like, no, actually, guys, this is pretty simple, right?
No. Okay. So you're absolutely correct. Like the comparison it's always existed, like the marriage between the two, but it's never been highlighted.
Right.
I guess is the way that we're trying to do it. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm saying.
Okay,
yes,
good.
But I think what Christian also adds to this conversation is the idea that just like every single writer has an editor, every faculty member should have a coach, right?
Yeah.
Just like Christian is there supporting, just like Christian's there supporting his students, we all need support too, because I mean, gosh, I've had so many bad teaching days, right? Like, and I've needed someone to be there to say, okay, this is one bad teaching day. Or maybe it wasn't as bad as you thought, Constanza, because I always say this to faculty, you are the only one that knows your lesson plan. So if you don't hit all the things on the lesson plan, or if it doesn't go according to plan, the only person who knows that is you, right? So like, get out of your head, Constanza. I've had to have that talk with myself a number of times. But I think that's the analogy there. And that's why Christian's message is so helpful in terms of the educational development space. Because in the classroom, we're usually the only subject matter expert there, right? But we need to be reminded that just like we're helping give feedback to our students, we need to change the way that we're teaching, because the individuals in front of us change.
Yeah.
The environment changes. We were talking at the beginning about how 2020 was a boring year, right? Nothing happened. Everybody had to change their teaching, whether they liked it or not.
Right.
I had faculty who said to me, I will never do anything with the learning management system. I will never give a class online. Well,
I'll up you. I had a colleague, not going to name him, but he retired.
Right.
Rather than have to move his class online.
Yeah.
So, I think I'm done.
And he's not the only one. He's not the only one.
Yeah.
But that was not because they couldn't do it. Right. That was fear.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing in educational development. We're saying, okay, I see you.
Yeah.
And just like Christian saying to his students, I'm not going to leave you. That's what educational developers do. They say, I'm going to walk this path with you. You have to ultimately walk the path yourself. I can't walk it for you, but I'll walk with you.
Right. I'll support you along the way.
Yeah.
So Christian, tell us more about improv in your class. Speaking of making students uncomfortable.
Well, I'll can I share with them we've been noodling on something. I want to introduce it. So there's and we didn't really.
Constanza nodded in agreement.
Yeah, I know, because I've been bothering with okay, and that, listen, I'm just gonna from the top, right?
Yeah, go.
Because we didn't practice this. We've been writing it out and talking about it nonstop. What do we value? What are some of the things that we love, and what do we want some of our students to get out of our class? We've been the one thing is everybody shoots for the stars. You know, what we want to do is we want people to raise their floor. Okay. And by raising their floor, they will get what we would call earned resiliency. So one thing we would want people to get out of the class, other than like an A and whatever it is that you're studying, you know,
these are the students you don't.
This is the students, and now and the professors and teacher would need to, you know, buy into that aspect of it, right? You know, the Cowardly Lion, right? They all get something. Tin Man got a brain, you know, all that stuff. You know, I forget who got what. Maybe he got a heart. Tin Man got a heart. Scarecrow got a brain. The lion got courage, right? Like, I would like them to leave the classroom what I would call earned resiliency, like a trait that they can literally take anywhere. And I say earned because I got to put them through the process of failing and recovering and overcoming and recommitting and all that stuff. It's the human element that we have been talking about that we feel like is missing. And then what can I give them other than an A in broadcasting that would help them in life? And that's earned resiliency. It travels with you in anything that you do, right? So, and it's hard, but I feel like that's an element. And you do that by not shooting for the stars. You shoot it by raising your floor. So when you screw up or you fail, the fall isn't that bad, right? And even when you do fall, you're not falling off a cliff, and you can still rebound and catch up to wherever you need to be. I feel like that's curious. Your thoughts on that?
Well, what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm on the right track here, that so in resiliency, you know, if there is a teaching approach, right, that allows this to happen. It sounds like what you're trying to develop is agnostic to the particular class you teach, right? You want to do something that, say, a professor in Middle East art and intro bio and senior seminar can do. That earned resiliency is sort of the core of the activity. Is it?
That would be, you're still teaching biology,
right. It's not going to take it over. But there are things you can do to create that discomfort and raise the flow.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that we really need to start thinking about, especially in today's world, is assessment, because we're constantly looking for the correct answer in higher education still. But what if we were looking for great, thoughtful questions? What if instead we were looking for, okay, how did this move your thinking forward? Or, all right, here's how you thought things were going to turn out. The opposite happened. What's your reflection at what if we graded for that? And in the same way in educational development, what if we engaged more metacognitively with our faculty and said, okay, you put your lesson plan in place. What did you get out of it? What did you notice? What didn't work? And those were the types of questions that we asked.
So when back to the classroom, when you say, what if we graded for that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think we grade for the types of questions asked versus the output. I think we grade for process instead of end result. But I think we have to change how we evaluate for that too, because students are told, okay, I've got to get the right answer. What do I have to do to earn the grade? But what if we said, look at all of your quote unquote failures. How did they move you forward? Christian is currently dancing with his hands in the air.
Sister, preach. See how she gets? This is how she gets me going.
I think I
love it.
I think I might pick up a collection plate in a second.
Yes.
And what if we did that, you know, with our evaluations as well, with faculty too? What did you learn from this process? Rather looking at them, you know, as these scary things as we do sometimes. What if we said, okay, how many questions did you ask? How many times did your way of thinking change? How many times did you have to pivot? That is what we assess students on.
So I'm going to push you, not to disagree, but to maybe have you anticipate if you haven't already gotten these kinds of questions, right? One challenge I've found with higher ed, because you know me well enough to know that I concur with your line of thinking here, right? But one challenge that I've run into with higher ed is that the assessment enterprise is set up for short-term value attribution, right? So what, the quiz you do next week, the end of semester grade, the 4-year GPA, right? And I'm not saying these things are not valuable, right? But I am saying that some of the things that you're discussing, which again, I do concur with, the impacts of that on your life tend to show up years and years and years down the road. And for this economic system, right, where you're constantly under the microscope to show that people can go into jobs and go into grad school, and your alumni can do X, Y, and Z, right? I worry that universities feel so pressured to show these short-term, we raise retention rates, etc. Again, valuable, but they don't have the mechanism set up to say, because of this sort of curiosity-based curriculum, our graduates went on and were happier adults in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And you know what? That data set is actually out there. I don't know if you know the report that came out in 2012, Great Jobs, Great Lives, was a Purdue Gallup, right? So and you look at Raj Chetty's work from Harvard, the Opportunity Atlas Project. So there actually are a few people around the country who study in this long-term way. It hasn't been as pervasive as I'd like to see it. And so while I love and support what you're saying, I just want us to kind of collectively anticipate, like, how do you make that case to people who are more short-term weary? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think, if you look at the top skills that they've predicted are needed for 2030, curiosity, critical thinking, right? How do we develop them? We need practice. So any good coach is going to tell you, okay, we need to have repetition with this. We need to create the environment for this. But I hear you. It is a challenge, right? How do we prove that this has meaning and value? I think we let the students speak for themselves.
Actually, Christian, I'm going to ask you this because when I know you all won a national championship at University of Colorado.
In an 8th grade championship at Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic High School in Northwest California. Everybody forgets that one. We beat St. Mary's like 40-12.
So you could pick either one, right? But I'm pretty sure that not every single player on either team went on to have a successful career in the NFL.
Well, yes, true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
broadly,
so if you're a coach, right? Yeah. As much as you want a lot of your alum to go on and play for NFL teams, just statistically, right? Some chunk of your players will do something else. Some might stay in professional sports in a different way, but some might go on to accounting school, right? And some might go, so there's a sense in which, and I'm gonna paraphrase a basketball coach I heard once telling his team, like, I'm not just trying to train you to win a national championship. I want you to be better husbands, better fathers, better community members. So you can have a mindset where your goal for these kids are not just the sports related goals, right? And I'm curious if you heard any of that type of coaching.
So my answer, and I want to try to get to the heart. First of all, I like you a lot. Like, I like the fact that he constantly asks questions, right? And we're not arguing. We're just trying to get more information and get more knowledge. That I love. Of all the guys I played with in college, let's say each year back in those days, there was maybe 100 kids on a team. Like 90. At that time, Nebraska had 123 kids on their team. Okay, like the numbers are lower now. They're in the 80s, based on scholarships and walk-ons, and college football is crazy. Anyways, so out of all those kids, maybe 6 had a shot, and out of the 6, 2 had a long career. So the odds are very, very low that you'll make a career out of it. But I would say every time I go back and every time I see a guy who works in insurance, real estate, finance, and they're one of my teammates, we all talk and think the same, regardless of what we're doing. So the impact that the coaches had on us, specifically our head coach, still resonates in everything they do. And think about it, that was 4 years, but you spend a lot of time with them, much more than you spend with a class in the semester. So the impact is much greater.
Right.
So to my point is, like, the impact can be seen, should be felt if no matter what you do, no matter what you do. And every time I listen to you, I'm talking to Constanza, and I thought she did a great job expressing. I just feel like there's something more that we can give them when they leave. And I think it's that earned resiliency. I feel like it's so valuable, and it's so hard to get because nobody just gives it to you. I can't give you this. Like, you have to earn it. Well, how do I earn it? Well, listen, believe me, you'll figure it out. Like, you'll just start collecting challenges and obstacles and this and that. And again, like I told you the other day, and I felt bad about it. Like I gave out midterm participation grades, and I gave everybody crappy grades on purpose. I wanted to see how they responded.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see like who would, try to make a comeback. I want to see who would ask me about it, who would challenge me about it, and then who would do something about it. And I would have a conversation with them, like promoted by them because they care, right? And out of the 25 kids in that one particular class, I probably had 10. And the other ones didn't say anything, but next thing you know, then we'll shut up. So I'm like, great, right?
Mm-hmm.
They understand it, right? So I don't know, small little, wins here and there. I hope build something bigger. That's just kind of the way I'm wired.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also what I value.
Mm-hmm.
So I push that agenda.
Do you have this conversation explicitly with them?
First day of class. Very first day of class.
Okay.
I told her, I said, is this okay?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had standards, values, expectations. I reinforce it like all the time.
Yeah. So to get back to my earlier question about improv, right? Speaking of a place where it could be uncomfortable, is that part of the earned resiliency project? Putting them in this space where you have to come up with stuff.
What you're doing with me right now is earning me resiliency. What you follow up question that challenged her point of view, and she had to sit there, get her grounding, and then answer. Right? She's a pro at that. Like she's unshakable in that way, and that's earned resiliency in my book. Because you're challenging me on my way of thinking, and maybe I don't have it all hammered out yet. Maybe there's some flaws in it, and I'm trying to noodle it down and tinker with it to kind of make it so it's clear so we can present it. And so, that's it. It's an everyday conversations, I would say.
The reason why I keep asking about the improv is because one of my earlier really positive impacts when I was an assistant professor was a professor of theater. Shout out to Judith Swift, University of Rhode Island. And my selfish thing was that I love theater just as a person who likes to go, right? And I did a little bit when I was younger. But I love the sort of dynamism of a room where there are people 20 feet from you, trying to put on a performance and tell a story. And there's kind of an intangible thing that I professionally didn't understand. But what she explained to me was, they're reading body language all the time. They're getting feedback from the audience, even if you're sitting there like perfectly still, right? And so she would take some of those principles and give me feedback on my teaching. And the reason why that was a little provocative is this was kind of the heyday of active learning becoming a big thing, which I'm totally on board with, right? But I think one of the unfortunate side effects of that is it kind of diminished the performative aspect of teaching, and you as an individual being able to inspire and to motivate and to not have to necessarily ask your question to get feedback, but to be able to just sort of look at you and see how you're physically responding to this, right? And this is where, again, I love improv. Never done it, but like gone to actually see performances and see how you just have this random thing and you have to come up with a response to it. And even for seasoned actors, I can see they're still uncomfortable. And so I guess I thought, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, I thought that intentional discomfort, it was a kind of a big key feature of the Earn Resiliency Project, if I can call it that.
I love that you call it that, first of all.
Trademark ERP.
Yeah. I mean, learning is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Learning is not comfortable. Learning comes with stress, and students think about stress. And sometimes we think about stress as being a bad thing. But to the point that Christian just made about challenging our way of thinking, we should have to sit with it. It shouldn't be that we just have these, because life doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
the answers to everything just come to us and appear. No. And sometimes we have to be proven wrong, but that's learning as well.
Yeah.
So I think improv helps. I mean, gosh, again, like no one could have predicted the last 10 years in higher education.
Oh, good.
If there's anything we need to be, it's adaptable. And improv, I think, is one of the best tools. We actually had someone come and do an improv workshop for faculty this fall. I still have folks talking about it. They're like, this has helped me so much in the classroom.
Yeah.
I think the experience you're describing, first of all, sometime I'd love to hear more about it, because having difficult conversations is something that we know faculty, not just here at Bryant, but, across the nation, are wondering how to do better because they care. how do I be more adaptable when I'm not sure what the situation in front of me is going to be, or when I'm not sure what the question, I might be asked is? Gosh, I mean, we could all benefit.
So let me just, I don't know if you remember, but my first syllabus, my first class that I ever taught here, I brought in an improv professional, and we did. I read about. We did a whole, we did a whole thing. It was crazy. It was like, I'm a tree. It wasn't like that. It was, it was interesting. It was interesting, and that was the point. That point was to remove your insecurities, and I was trying to teach them, like, from a broadcasting point of view, like, you can't care what people think about you as you're giving your opinion or your stand-up. You can't internalize people making fun of you or they think you're stupid. Like, you have to be okay in your own skin. Like, it's part of the skill that you will pick up by learning to be, in broadcasting, because everybody's got an opinion, and they don't like what you say or how you say it. So and that was that exercise, the improvisation, but it always goes back to what we kind of figured is this, medal that you would achieve, by just going through basic training.
Right. As you're describing that, I'm thinking about, like, again, I watch way too much sports, and I do enjoy actually the analysis of people who kind of, play the game and stuff. And I actually notice their body language, right? I'm sure they're taught to look intently at the other person when they're giving their take or whatever. I feel I could almost see the training happening. But anyway, that's an aside. What I want to get back to, I brought up this earlier about takes, right?
Takes?
I'm using that term. I don't know if it's an official term, but it's a term that I've seen or heard used a lot in the sports casting.
Oh, like a hot take.
Oh yeah, it doesn't even have to be a hot take.
No, but I get it.
But essentially, your opinion, right?
Yeah,
and
it would be we would call it a lead. We would call it like what's on tap. We would call it a take. Like,
right. Well, we'll repeat this. Right. That kind of thing, right? And on one hand, like, again, as an amateur, as a consumer, right? I understand this person has experience in that space and is more informed. But also, I want to reserve the right for me to be like, yeah, we probably wouldn't watch in the same game, right? Like, I don't want to just be a uncritical consumer of what I'm hearing, right? And I'm curious if, without knowing your syllabus, if there's any of that kind of back and forth that you talk to your students about. And the reason why I ask is that it does get into critical consciousness. It gets into, they're going to grow up in a world where they have people summarizing complex wars in 5 minutes. And if they don't have that critical mindset, they might just take that opinion and go to a cocktail party or a sports bar and just repeat it because Christian said it nice and loud, right? Kind of thing. So I wonder how much of that dialogue is taught or discussed even. I'm not sure.
All the time. We lead with it. We do something in my broadcasting. We go, what's your lead? Okay. And then we have another thing where I call it dueling banjos, where I create a list of, and I give it to them the first day of class. I call it a love-hate list. And it's simple stuff like Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or, 8 a.m. classes, things that they should really have a strong opinion on, right? And they would love it or hate it so they could defend it. And then I pair them up and there's a little competition. You love Dunkin' Donuts. She hates it. Okay, now we're going to have a little debate. And they don't do very well at it. They don't do very well at it. But that's fine. Yeah. Because then once we talk about it, like, listen, because we are trying to get them to think for themselves, but more importantly, not be afraid to share their opinion of it, even if it's wrong. Who cares if it's wrong? I don't care if it's wrong. Like, I'm looking for a performance is what I'm looking for.
Especially the defending it part.
Yeah, and I want it to make sense. It's got to make sense. Like, so many times, I'm like, dude, all you did was repeat what they said, or we start with something uncomfortable, like uncomfortable, and we go through the whole room. Right. And so I think that answers your question. But yeah, we do that all the time. You have to. I have to do it.
How do the students respond? Not to that activity, but to the entire resilience that you're bringing to the classroom?
Some of them give up. Some of them give up. They just either because they're frustrated with it, but others lean in. They lean into it. And
I'd be curious to hear from I mean, you don't have to go and ask them now, but the ones who lent in, I can't remember.
yeah.
Like if there's any, do you have any kind of like reflection at the end of the semester when they kind of think back through on what that leading in was like for them and what it taught them? I'd be,
I don't know. What would I do
without
about that?
violating FERPA? I would love to read that.
I would ask, like, if I wanted to do that, I don't even know how could I do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course you could do
And then
that.
how would I do it?
You are in a live consultation session.
I know. All right, we'll wait till we're done.
No concern. Go.
Yeah,
for it.
I mean, I think
Because that would, isn't that weird though?
no.
Tell me if you like me or not. I'm going to stand right in front of you as you write down like your
No,
answers.
but that's not the question. The
Right.
question
Right.
is, where did you struggle in this course?
Right.
What happened as you were going through
Right.
that? And looking back, maybe you do like a first day kind of like take and then a last day kind of take, or not. Say, looking back, throughout this course, here is your syllabus, here are all the topics that we covered. What was the most uncomfortable thing, for you in this course? Where are you now with it? It's those reflective questions that you ask.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I'll give you just another example. So I teach intro-bio. The last, they do 3 reflections, kind of initial, middle, and end, and they're all different. And the last one is called Letter to a Future First-Year Student. And so they write a 1-page letter to a hypothetical future first-year student. Based on your successes and challenges this semester, how would you advise that person to navigate this semester? So essentially, it's a roundabout way of asking them to reflect on what went well, what didn't go well. And it's
I
almost
like the way you did that.
They're almost like they're writing to their former self. Like if you went back to September 5th, what
we
would
were
you
thinking the same thing.
Right,
I was
right.
saying, have them write a letter to their first day self,
right.
telling them what they learned throughout the course of the
Right.
semester, as you were saying that. Yeah.
See, this is great stuff. Like, this is the stuff I'm like, wow, that's a great idea. I'm totally going to steal this. Like that. This is the
It's not theft. We give
Well, I know, but it is such a valuable like recommendation, like that listen, I don't act like I know as much as I should know about teaching at this point in my life, so I'm still like trying to be like a sponge to try to, but I would love to read those.
We should talk more about that. Okay, I want to get you all out. Are you going to say something else?
Nope.
I want to get you all out of here on this one. What's next for ERP? Notice how I use the acronym now.
Yeah, I know.
It's official when there's a higher ed acronym.
I know, right?
That's the only way it's official.
In my head, I was like, what does the E stand for?
You can tell this is being recorded in the morning. We need more coffee.
I would say what's next is one, I would like for us to define it simply. And then start with the raising the floor, because that's the first aspect. You can't earn it unless you constantly raise your floor. Explain that, and then try to build, a teaching platform off that. Without even talking to her, and then teach other professors how to implement, and then convince them. I think this is a key word. Convince them that this is a good addition to their curriculum or their syllabus.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, we need to normalize coaching. As I was saying earlier, everybody needs a coach. And to your point that you made at the beginning of this conversation, it doesn't necessarily need to be someone in higher education or within your field, right? Some of the best advice that I get about what I do is actually from my husband, who has never stepped foot in the higher education setting, right? He's like, why are you doing this? Explain it to me. And then I have to, actually do the work that I do with others at home. It's great. But I think normalizing that idea for faculty and for students. And I think for faculty, it's almost even more important. Students are here. They're in the classroom. They know that we're going to ask them to learn. But we need to push that on faculty a little bit more as well. But we also have to show them why and how it works.
Well, was that your mic drop? You just dropped the mic. You literally dropped it. Here it comes.
Yes.
Well, I selfishly would. This is why I asked, right? Because I can see you all at Pod presenting this. I can see, and that's why I was pushing the agnostic to curriculum thing, because there's subject matter expertise that is necessary. Like students need to learn all the technicalities of what goes into sports broadcasting, right?
Sure.
But Christian, both of you have identified that when you have the pleasure and privilege of having students, you have an opportunity to impact their lives in profound ways besides just knowing stuff. And that's what a good coach does. That's what a good teacher does, what a good professor does. I'm so glad you were here to help us see that link more clearly.
Wow, that was really good closing. It was great. And I love the fact that you use stuff, right? Because it's just stuff. Seems like very basic and elementary, and like, oh, how dare he use stuff? He should be more descriptive with his words. He's a professor.
But you know what? I think the soft skills, the essence of the stuff, even though it seems like we should know it, the essence of the stuff. See, it seems like we should know it. I think to your point earlier, Brian, we need to make it explicit.
We need to make it explicit.
And we need to think about what we do implicitly that shows to our students, to our colleagues explicitly as well. It's the most important stuff out of all the stuff.
Hey, thanks to both of you.
Well, this has been great. Thank you for flying out here. And thanks for giving us the opportunity. It was fun. This was a lot of fun. I can do this for at least another 3 hours.
He's ready. Yeah.
I know. My plane wouldn't forget.
I know. All right. All right. So,
all right, Constanza, I love you.
All right. So this is, I'm shutting this down in 3, 2, 1.
Knowledge Unbound is brought to you by the Rios Institute. We are funded by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Special thanks to our guests today, Constanza Bartholomae from Bryant University, faculty developer, interim director of their Teaching and Learning Center, Christian Fauria, professor in residence at Bryant University, teaching sports broadcasting, sharing some knowledge, sharing some wisdom, and maybe even hopefully collaborating with both of them in the future on some of the things we talked about. Our producer, Mr. Segev Amasai. Segev.
Brian.
When last did you... Well, you did... I was going to say when last did you interview a major sports figure? I guess there are two things wrong with that statement. Right now he's a professor in residence, so maybe it's not fair to call him that. But B, you weren't there, so I guess that makes it a big lie. But you did listen to the interview.
I did.
And you said you found him interesting. Why?
I like to say it's more about his humanity, how he emphasized hustling, his handling of rejection, and just being open about the mistakes and the failures he's had in his life. And I feel that a lot of people, especially young people nowadays, they're always taught like, hey, don't show any weakness, don't be weak, just power through it, yada yada yada. And it's just sometimes it's okay to remind yourself that you're human.
Well, I am having a little chuckle at you using the phrase young people nowadays. You are half my age, sir.
I may be a 45-year-old in a 25-year-old's body. Whatever you want to make of that.
I do agree with you, though. I do agree about being open about rejection and to be, I chuckle, yes, but at the same time, I do appreciate that you saw that, and I hope that the younger audience who listen to this podcast get that message as well, that failure is sort of part of the journey, and its value is in what you learn from it, right? A lot of things to learn from today's conversation. I just want to maybe put a plug in for that discussion we had on earned resilience. It doesn't come easy. It's not meant to, and because those of us who do learning science understand that's where the best learning takes place. So I hope in your classrooms today, this week, for the rest of the semester, you find opportunities to give your students chances to earn resilience. Have a great week. Be excellent to each other.
First, we have to, in each moment, as you just said so beautifully, make people feel seen. And we have to really understand who they are in order to make them feel seen. What do I mean by that? If a student, runs up to me across campus, I want to acknowledge that I know who they are. Because I think if folks don't feel comfortable having that, question moment with you where they're asking something of you, if they don't feel comfortable being vulnerable in that state of curiosity, then we're doing something wrong.
I would like them to leave the classroom what I would call earned resiliency. Like a trait that they can literally take anywhere. And I say earned because I got to put them through the process of failing and recovering and overcoming and recommitting and all that stuff. It's the human element that we have been talking about that we feel like is missing. And then what can I give them other than an A in broadcasting that would help them in life?
Right.
And that's earned resiliency. It travels with you in anything that you do.